All right, let's catch up with London this morning and see how the day is shaping up with Juliana, my colleague there. Good morning, Juliana. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Chimmy. I'm fantastic. Nice to see you in the morning.
Good to see you too. Well, there is a 24-hour-long strike by train managers on Virgin West Coast over what Union RMT describes as the shocking treatment and dismissal of a colleague. How is that affecting movement this morning?
Well, surprise, surprise, Jimmy, but this strike has been called off. There was a last-minute resolution between train bosses and RMT. The RMT union are a massive union that look after most transport staff here in the UK. Now, the Virgin West Coast Line runs between Birmingham and London. And as you said, you know, these train managers were planning to strike for about 24 hours, which was to cause alarming disarray to hundreds of thousands of passengers. This stems from a dispute that one of their staff had with a customer who was allegedly being extremely aggressive to the staff member. But this manager was dismissed by bosses. The RMT union were not happy, and there have been several other reasons why they decided to kick back against bosses, but they used this as a case study. But as I said, an arrangement was made with bosses overnight. So luckily, all the commuters that use the Virgin West Coast Line were able to travel into London stress-free this morning.
Great, that's good to know. Okay, how are the markets responding to yesterday's speech by the Prime Minister Boris Johnson at the CBI's annual conference?
Well, the Conservatives are doing extremely well in the polls at the moment. They have a double-digit point leading in about 3 or 4 of the main polls used here in the UK to determine election results. Yesterday at intraday, as soon as Prime Minister Boris Johnson finished his speech at the Confederation of Business Industry, the equities market raised higher, and also sterling. Sterling was trading at about a $1.30 mark, which is pretty good considering we still are in an era of paralysis. But business does like Conservatives. They like their plans. They're a little bit worried about the opposition leader, Jeremy Corbyn, and his plans to part nationalise BT. Also, as well, it appears as if, you know, if a Tory government does get into power, the equities market seem to think that this will determine that we'll have a smoother Brexit process in the UK. But tonight, there will be the first head-to-head between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn. The Labour supporters and the party are hoping that a more fluid, stoic Jeremy Corbyn will able to beat off Boris Johnson, who some people describe as a bumbling wreck. So it'll be interesting to see just how the markets react tomorrow.
Sure, we will watch out for that. Anyway, are there corporate news and data we should look out for today?
Well, there is some corporate news. EasyJet, the budget airline that trades on the FTSE 250, they've released their year-to-date results, and it shows that their profits have actually plunged 26%. Their CEO has been citing higher fuel costs and also the fact that consumers are not spending as much. Just as they announced that this morning, they also announced that they'll be expanding what they're giving to their customers by having EasyJet holidays. And this comes really as one of their main rivals, Thomas Cook, went bust. And just a couple of weeks ago, EasyJet spent about £36 million in claiming some of those slots, those plane slots that Thomas Cook had at Gatwick Airport and Bristol Airport. Those slots are good for budget customers who like to pay for their holidays throughout the year rather than one-off payments. So even though EasyJet have announced that they have lost profits, they're hoping that if they're able to kickstart EasyJet holidays before Christmas, they'll be able to lap up some of the money that Thomas Cook sadly lost earlier this year.
All right, Juliana, we'll wait to get more update from you later in the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Right, I'm back here on the equities market. Let's do a quick crossover down to Temple, also on the trading floor. Good morning once again, Temple. So tell me, what sentiment have you observed so far this morning as the market resumes?
Well, MTN is changing the direction of the market now. We're seeing some green performance on the key benchmark indices of the exchange. We've seen some more than 3% gain on the MTN. It's moved up from 121 naira to 125 naira as we speak right about now, and that's where we've seen some gains at this point in time. Other than that, we're seeing profit taking, and of course that's on a couple of counters, but we're seeing more of a sell down on some other securities, especially the likes of Dangote Cement, which is where investors are not too sure what's the share buyback which has been proposed by the ultimate shareholder in that company, is proposing. So we've been seeing a lot of speculative trading on that side of the market, on that particular counter of Dangote Cement. So as we speak, we've seen some 0.62% gains in the all share index of the market. I should also add that there was a news that came in a while ago regarding Access Bank announcing the change of leadership in terms of the chairperson of that company. For about 12 years or thereabout, it has been I'm sorry, I really can't remember the name, but basically there's an announcement now that Mrs. Olusoga, yes, that's it, Mrs. Olusoga has been the chairman of Access Bank for a while, and of course she is going to be retiring come the 8th of January 2020. That's in line with the corporate governance codes of the Central Bank of Nigeria, while Mrs. Awoshika will be taking over from her. We understand that Mrs. Awoshika has now been an independent director on the board of Access Bank since 2013, and she is now going to be taking over as the chairman once Mrs. Olusoga, exits in January 2020. Mrs. Awoshika, a lot is known about her. She is a thoroughbred administrator. We know that she's been in charge of the credit and audit unit of Access Bank for a while. She's the chairman and the vice chair at the same time for that unit of the bank. And of course, she is also known as the chairman of Chams PLC, and of course, since she became the chairman of Chams PLC, we've seen so much of activity on the stock rise of the share price of Chams PLC. So one major concern that came with these announcements, which is also clarified in that statement, is that Mrs. Olusoga, we understand, as it's been in the media before now, that she had some misunderstanding with some of the board members and all that, but this particular statement actually clarifies that there was nothing like that, and that it was all based on the tenure time that Mrs. Olusoga had to spend as the chairman of that company or chairperson of that company, that it has now reached the retirement time for her to actually exit, and that is why she's exiting. She's not exiting based on some kind of discrepancies or disagreements with other board members. So Mrs. Awoshika actually takes over from January, and of course we do expect the sentiment that investors have had before now on Access Bank, which is a major mover and an active company in the stock markets, to continue. As we speak, that hasn't really changed so much of the share price of that bank. It's still trending at a little above 9 naira, but we recall that Access Bank actually traded at 11 naira on Friday. That's the peak, I think, for this year so far. But due to profit taking, we've seen it actually depreciated to 9 naira plus, and we do hope that by the time the price correction that we're experiencing on quite a number of the stocks in the markets today, simmers, I think from tomorrow or for the rest of the week, we should see a revamp of the effects of all of this demand for the volume of transactions that we've been seeing lately, reflecting more on the key benchmark indices of the markets. Chimeze.
Sure, Tempo. I think we will keep an eye on that stock and see how this news is going to affect the stock eventually. And of course, you will join us later in the day to give us update on that. Thank you, Tempo. All right, with that, we draw the curtain on today's edition of the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago.